somebody in here who you know with certainty can put together a top 10 defense, even with some spare parts. A guy who is not going to get poached as a head coach, a guy who's not afraid to mix it up a little bit. Maybe he mixes it up too much, but at least he's not conservative by nature. And Kyle will have to respect him. That would be a huge win for the 49ers to get Matt Eberflus, and I'd be on the phone right now saying, hey, how would you like to come and be a consultant, Robert Saleh style? We got a spot for you.
Yeah, I mean, they run the 4-3, and they don't blitz a lot, right? I mean, more this year, I think, than maybe they had in prior years. But I think their defense. Yeah, what? Say again?
They had to blitz a lot more. They didn't have the defensive line this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that quickly. I think you had that one in the bag, but I kind of like that.
That one's been in the bag for a long time, JD. I've been ready to find this. I kind of like that one for about a month.
No, I mean, look, you knew whether it was today or at any point between now and what, January 5th, when the regular season ends, you knew that Eberflus was
Black
was
Monday,
be gone.
Black Friday, same thing these days.
Yeah, same thing for him. I think, and the 49ers are still going to have to recommit. I know at times we've talked about, is it more the offense, the defense, and there's been plenty of blame to go around for the 49ers in terms of why things have not worked out. But I think they are going to be in a position where they really are going to have to try to shore up their defense. Again, I think in terms of accountability to the scheme, detail to the scheme, just being able to execute the scheme. Like, I think some of it is talent. I think they're going to have to draft heavy defensively in 2025 to really try and reestablish some physicality and some speed, and I think they have to get multiple defensive tackles in there as well to be able to stop the run. So a lot of things ahead for the 49ers, but point being, they do, in my mind, have to shore up the defense in a big way, and you said set and forget in terms of Kyle Shanahan having somebody that he knows nobody's going to take away, that he can trust and respect. I think, Dieter, it really makes a lot of sense. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Matt Maiocco is coming up here at 9:50. We'll keep the conversation going as it relates to the 49ers and what is ahead at Buffalo this Sunday, and then the Bears and Rams after that. I also want to react to what Dieter had to say at the beginning of the segment before the Eberflus news broke as to just what's left for the 49ers to still be fighting for. I've got some thoughts on that. As it is, John Dickinson and Dieter Kurtenbach here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Daly City, shout out to you for supporting KNBR, Daly City's sports leader.
Caleb Williams out of the shotgun, 3rd and long. Time is moving. Gotta go under 10 seconds now. Oh my goodness. Back to Williams. He's ready to throw. He'll throw it down the middle of the field. Incomplete at the horn. The game is over. The Bears won't even get to 4th down. They leave Detroit with a timeout in their pocket. And the Lions, for the first time since 16, have won on Thanksgiving. 23-20 the final score. How in the world can that happen?
It's the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears indeed. I mean, major botch job in that one to almost pull off a harrowing comeback and be in position to at least tie the freaking game with a field goal, although kicking field goals has not been any picnic for the Bears either. I think they get every other one blocked the last couple of weeks. But the Bears bungle it there at the end. Back here, JD, John Dickinson, and Dieter Kurtenbach on KNBR here on a Black Friday. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Matt Eberflus has been fired by the Chicago Bears off of that. Why are we spending so much time on Matt Eberflus being fired? I mean, typically it wouldn't be that big of a thing. Hey, all right, the Bears do what the Bears do. Doesn't really apply to the Niners. Well, this kind of does apply to the Niners because the Bears' next opponent is the Niners on December the 8th at Levi's Stadium, and that will be the first game for Thomas Brown as the interim head coach for the Bears. And we mentioned this in the last segment as the news broke. The Bears were 2 seconds away on October 27th when I think you and I, Dieter, were on the field at Levi's before the 49ers were about to play the Cowboys. And the Hail Mary happens. I mean, they were about to win their 4th in a row, be 5-2 after being 1-2. And right there among the group of a NFC North, that's obviously a really good division this year. Instead, they lose that game, and now they've lost 5 games since then on top of it, and Matt Eberflus is out. The other reason we're talking about Matt Eberflus is because, well, Dieter thinks he could be a hell of a potential defensive coordinator candidate if the 49ers look to go in a different direction come this offseason. And I'm with you, Dieter, in the sense that as things stand right now, and I'm always I don't mean this as a cop-out, but I am always a how the season actually ends matters kind of a guy.
Yeah, I get that.
And we don't, and to this point, while I wholeheartedly agree with you about the lack of moments of brilliance for this team, and when have they showed you that they've got it in them to be a contender, let alone a playoff team, I think that's spot on. I mean, I've even made the case in some casual conversations with other media members, and just the fact that if this team was 8-3 right now, if the Niners were 8-3 right now, it would be, and I've used this term, it would be kind of a fraudulent 8-3. Given
I get that.
If you just take Seattle, Arizona, and the Rams, now you'd still rather be in that position and have a chance to fix some of the things that ail you and be right there. That would have them third basically in the NFC.
I'd love to be having that conversation.
Yeah, they'd be behind.
About how I'm not so sure they're on the same level as Detroit or Green Bay, JD.
Or
I'm
Philly.
not on that.
Yeah,
or Philly. I feel like they're just a tier below. They're 5 tiers below right now. Baby steps.
They're 5 tiers below. So while I agree with all of that, I do think I like to see how it ends, and that's where I'm inclined right now today to be with you in the sense that a defensive coordinator change is going to be in order. But I'm also going to allow I'm not that hard set on it, I guess, to where maybe my opinion couldn't change based on how this season finishes. But look, if they limp to the finish and 5-6 turns into 5-7, which, again, we're both expecting that. I don't see how the 49ers go to Buffalo with the Bills coming off a bye, having just beaten the Chiefs, and maybe no Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa and others on Sunday night. I don't see it. But if 5-7 turns into 6-11 or 7-10, which it could, then there's going to be, I think, some significant changes. And no, that doesn't mean Kyle Shanahan, but maybe significant changes beneath Kyle Shanahan as far as some of the coaches. And so, yeah, again, that's where I sit on that, because the defense has just not been consistent nor buttoned up enough over the course of the season, Dieter.
I mean, my general thought on the defense is I don't actually think that it's Nick Sorensen's fault. I think that he got handed a bad deck of cards and was asked to make a good hand out of it, and he had neither the experience or the rope, frankly, the purview to go out and do it. If Nick Sorensen in the deep recesses of his belly believes that they should be blitzing and playing, a lot of cover zero, he's not allowed to do that. Kyle Shanahan won't let him do that, because
that's why he got the job, was because Steve Wilks did too much of that.
Correct. So, like, another name to remember here is Jeff Ulbrich, the current interim head coach of the Jets, who's not going to get the full-time job there. At least, I don't think so. It's the Jets. They could bears it up and do anything at this point. But that's the guy that they really wanted for the defensive coordinator job this past offseason, to the point where I'd have to think, knowing that the Jets would say no, asked specifically Kyle Shanahan asked Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, who's now out there, and Woody Johnson, their owner, if they could hire Ulbrich to be their DC, even though he was already the DC. And I think their argument was he'll get to call defense here in San Francisco, so it's not a lateral move. Ultimately, the Jets disagreed. Nobody stepped up and said actually any of this stuff. Basically, the Jets kept Ulbrich, even though the Niners wanted him, was going to give him a big pay raise, all this stuff. They didn't get him. They're going to go right back to that well. There's no question about that, because Ulbrich comes from the Saleh class, right? He's Saleh's DC. He runs the same sort of stuff. He has the same sort of temperamentality. I think he's worked with Kyle before. I should probably do some better research on that at this point. But the connection is strong. That's where they're going to go if they do and fire Nick Sorensen. To your stance of, I got to see how the season ends, I get it. And I don't think Nick Sorensen should get fired if they lose to Buffalo 50-0 on Sunday. Like, I think that he does get the season, much as Kyle gets to clean up this mess, right? There's a certain level of respect that needs to be granted even to those we don't even know in Nick Sorensen. But let me throw this your way, JD, because I've noted that I haven't seen anything from these 49ers that gives me the indication that there's some dormant super team ready to explode out when the moment gets really tough. You just haven't seen it. It does not feel as if there's another gear that this car can reach. It's stuck in second. It can go 20 miles per hour. We're not taking this bad boy on the highway. And with the defense, I held out, I think, as long as I could on the defense, and specifically on Sorensen, who calls the defense, because it's such a difficult thing to determine if the defensive coordinator is good or bad, right? The play calls aren't as integral to the external view of success as it is in offense, right? You can see when an offensive coordinator sucks because the quarterback doesn't know what's happening, the players don't know what's happening, and they're running into each other and all this. Defense is generally chaotic, so it's very difficult to figure out if that was a bad play call or if they just have bad players. And to this point, I've looked at this defensive line in particular, which I haven't been a fan of since the second they signed Leonard Floyd. I look at a very young secondary, and I look at a linebacker core with Fred Warner, who's playing on a broken bone in his ankle because the alternative is Devondre Campbell's your Mike, and he can't let that happen. That's called leadership, folks. Regardless, they got a bad defense overall. Young and inexperienced on the back end, not good, but plenty of experience on the defensive line. It's a bad combo. And I've held out as long as I could, but the 12 men on the field back to back for Sorensen, I can't unsee that, right? I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. I want to say that his hands are tied behind his back. I want to say that he got dealt a bad hand. At least be organized then, right? I'm not, JD, I think maybe you can relate to this, though you are much more talented and professional than me, but like there is a level of professionalism of I might not be the most talented, I might not be the most interesting, I might not be the funny, all these things, but at least I'm going to have my ducks in a row when I show up to work. Like no one's going to out-prepare me because I got to be prepared if I want to have a shot in this game. And maybe this is, the Tom Brady mentality or whatever. I feel like that's a baseline level of professionalism. To have 12 men on the field back-to-back is unforgivable Full stop. It's unforgivable because that is the base level of competence needed to be a defensive coordinator. You can be a secondaries coach, a safeties coach, wherever. I'm sure he'd do a great job. In fact, I like what they've done with the secondary. But you got to be able to count to 12. And you got to make sure that coming out of a timeout, they had 80 seconds between the flag being thrown, the play being stopped, and the next play. 80 seconds to ensure that someone could count to 12 on your staff, and you don't have the wherewithal to pull somebody off the field. It's unacceptable. And when I'm already on the fence on if you're doing a good job or a bad job, it's pretty hard for me to come back from something like that. So as this season progresses, he'll get an opportunity to show that, hey, actually, I am the man here. To whatever degree he can be the man in a Kyle Shanahan system. And I'm talking top-down system. But it's pretty hard for me to believe that this guy is the right answer, not just for, obviously, this year, but in the future, that you want to build up with this guy running the show. He can't count to 12.
Yeah, well, look, I get that. I still think, part of the reason he got the job was because that he was well-liked by the players and that they believed they had enough talent on the defense to get back to closer to the old ways of how they were doing things before Steve Wilks came in and said, hey, maybe we don't have the talent to be able to operate in the manner that you've operated. Oh, by the way, I'm more comfortable dialing up blitzes in certain situations. And I think that led to a lot of confusion last year. I thought it led to the players being uncomfortable with all of the change. Hey, we're gonna blitz now. Oh, we've never done that before. And then guys are out of position.
Much chip on the shoulder with Wilks too, and he's running Tampa too with Fred Warner using him as a free safety. We can just call it what it is now because we're coming up on a year removed. Like Fred Warner got Steve Wilks fired as much as Kyle fired him because Fred was like, "What the hell are we doing here?" And to Fred's credit, they did have the talent to run the same stuff last year. I don't know if they do. Credit to Steve Wilks. Maybe he was ahead of the curve here. I still think he.
Well, they have more talent last year than they do this year. This year, and,
no question.
And to that point, and to that point on Sorensen, because I do think I will speak. Look, if they decided they wanted to make a change at the end of the year on Sorensen, given the way things have gone, I could fully understand it. I also think that as we sit here at 5-6, to me, like this team has bigger problems than that, and a lot of those problems have been on the other side of the ball. So I
doesn't
think
mean you shouldn't solve a problem though. If you got a problem you can solve, you solve it because you got a lot of other ones to get to. Take the easy win.
But I think that's a January. That's a whenever your season 100%. Ends in January, 100%. Whether it's the 5th or whatever kind of a problem. My overarching point on that is, I think I would probably want somebody better than Nick Sorensen for next year to be the defensive coordinator. But I also don't think, in fairness, that the talent level on this 49ers defense is anywhere close to where it needs to be. They need 2 defensive tackles. They need a linebacker, of which maybe Dre Greenlaw is that guy. We'll see if he's ultimately able to return. His practice window opened this week. They've got a lot of youth in the secondary, so I'm open-minded to giving them some benefit of the doubt in terms of growing pains there. And I don't think it's been all bad. I think a lot of the young players have made plays, but I think there's also, they show their youth at times, and that's really gotten them burned. So you have to, I just don't think that this defense is anywhere near, and Fred Warner before this ankle injury in week 4, I thought was playing at an all-pro level. I thought he's battled the best he can throughout the course of the season, but he can't do it alone. When the Niners were elite defensively, it was him flying around doing what he does at an all-pro level, and it was Dre Greenlaw at pretty close to that kind of a level, basically doing the same thing. And they had 2 of those guys, and they had better defensive tackles to try and slow down some of the run game. So in fairness to Sorensen, as much as we can have that conversation, and I'm kind of with you, I just think and again, the offense has been the problem, the defense has been the problem at different points. I just do not believe that this defense is, I think it's 2 levels worse in terms of talent than it was 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
I totally buy it, but again, is this the coordinator that is going to build it up, or bring
Not
something
necessarily.
out of no, and I just haven't seen it yet. He'll get opportunities here. He's got 6 more games to prove that he is in fact the guy that he can.
And again,
do
when you get the job in part because there's a belief that you're a lot more talented than you are, and things don't work out, that doesn't mean you get to keep the job. That doesn't mean you get to keep the job. Like,
can we make a pact here, JD? Can we make a solemn promise to each other that we won't say that this team has a lot of talent? Because I'm sick of hearing it. I'm sick of hearing, oh, this team has a lot of talent. This team has a lot of names. This team has a lot of high-priced players. But this team clearly does not have, quote, a lot of talent. I'm sick of hearing it. I'm sick of hearing the Niners talk about it. I'm sick of hearing fans talk about it. Show me where this talent is. And no, you're not allowed to watch previous year's films because it's not on this year's films. It's not on the All-22 this year.
They have guys that are having disappointing seasons that have, name players, to your point, that are having disappointing seasons. I also think there's been the whole thing on the offense, and we can get into it, where you take one player away and the whole thing looks different, which is something that we saw a lot even in these years where they were winning 13 games and getting to NFC Championship games. There were stretches of these seasons where you take a player or two away, or prior to Christian McCaffrey arriving, when it was basically Debo in the Christian McCaffrey role in terms of significant touches and impact on the offense and everything flowing through him as the best player and everybody kind of getting theirs off of that. To me, I think there is a lot of talent in terms of the skill players on paper, but you take one away and it seemingly impacts everybody else in the system. And I think there's been an inability to take what's left and scheme that up to where these guys are able to live up to their name value. Now, is part of that they've lost a step? Debo Samuel is part of that. George Kittle's having an incredible season. Christian McCaffrey hasn't. George Kittle's been really good this year.
He's been their best offensive player.
So I think there's varying degrees of that. But, maybe that's something we can get into with Maiocco and after Maiocco. But, no, good conversation to continue to have. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. That is the number to give us a call or shoot us a text here. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. We'll get to some of those here between now and 11:30. Raiders and Chiefs coming up here on the Sports Leader at that point. But Matt Maiocco is going to join us next from NBC Sports Bay Area. We'll get his thoughts on all of this and whether the 49ers are at their last stand point in lake effect, snow-filled Buffalo. At least it might be by Saturday. That's coming up next here on the Sports Leader. All right, welcome back. Happy Friday. It's John Dickinson and Dieter Kurtenbach here on the Sports Leader with you until 11:30. Let's go out to the UMA guest line, and it is a pleasure to be joined by NBC Sports Bay Area's Matt Maiocco, 49ers insider for them and for us here at KNBR. Matty, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you guys doing this wonderful Friday morning?
We are doing well, and I'm staring out at a just a glorious sunshine-filled Friday here in the East Bay, and I'm reading, Matty, about lake effect snow. What Dieter had a great Midwest and East
so
Coast
the Canadian
knowledge.
air is coming down and over the lakes, which are about 50 degrees right now. It's going to create just an incredible force of snow. Is what I'm doing.
Here's the thing, Matt. So every time I read the weather report, it doesn't show up, and I'm on a flight tonight at a SFO on a red eye tonight. I don't know when you're heading to Buffalo, but
I will be seeing you at the airport. Then I'm on that same flight.
Oh, okay,
buddies,
got it. Beautiful, nice. Well, great minds. Matty and I have had a few travel overlaps this season, but so every time I read the report, it doesn't really show. It's like, it could be some flurries. It's going to be cold, windy maybe. But then you hear people talking about the fact that there could be like 2 feet between maybe Saturday morning and kickoff.
Yep.
On how does that reconcile? I'm trying to figure out what the heck's actually going to happen here.
Well, I turned to my Buffalo expert, someone you know very well by the name of Greg Papa. Grew up in Buffalo, knows the weather patterns there. He said Orchard Park is definitely where the stadium is located is definitely different than Buffalo because of, and he explained it, and then my eyes kind of glossed over, and I lost what he was saying, and I started calling up funny animal videos on the internet to get out of them. But he said that just the way that stadium is located, even if there's like 1 or 2 inches of snow elsewhere in Buffalo in Orchard Park, it might dump 2 or 3 feet of snow. So the last time I checked the weather about an hour ago, and it did look like snow tomorrow, Sunday, like it could be significant. And so I don't know that I'm trying to think. I've never covered a snow game. I've covered game like that Thursday night when the Steelers and Cleveland played. I've never covered a game in 30 years where you couldn't see the yard markers. There have been cold weather games, the playoff game against the Packers, but never just a out and out snow game. And now that I'm thinking about it, I can't think of any 49ers snow games. There've been, like I said, there've been cold weather games. The NFC Championship game at Soldier Field comes to mind, but never a game where people are picking snow out of face masks, anything like that.
I can't think of one. You would be a better source on that than I.
Yeah, and actually, when I was saying that, Dieter, about picking snow out of face masks, the image in my mind was Steve Young when he was at Tampa Bay and played in Green Bay. And do you remember that? He got tackled and his face first into the snow, and they had to scrape.
I've seen the NFL films of that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So that's what comes to mind when I think of that. But yeah, I don't think the 49ers have had one, at least not that I can remember.
Matty, has anything, we weren't allowed at the facility yesterday. They listed Brock Purdy as limited. Who knows what that even means anymore? Has anything really shifted as far as you can tell with Purdy from week to week here?
No, it hasn't, at least not significantly enough so that your starting quarterback can go out and throw a football in practice. And that's the way it was yesterday, too. As I understand it, he did do some throwing, but still being limited. When you're a quarterback and you're limited, that's not good because that means you're not taking part in all the 11-on-11 reps that you should be taking part of if you're the quarterback. So, some positions it's okay to be limited. Some positions, and I guess even with quarterback, I guess if you're dealing with an ankle sprain or something and they just want to keep you off your feet, that's one thing. But when you're talking about your arm and you're not even able to make the throws that you'd be asked to make in a game on a Thursday Wednesday or Thursday. And then we kind of fold into that what we've just been talking about with the weather, the wind, the cold. You're going to need somebody like Josh Allen who can just kind of throw a dart through that wind and not have it impacted. But if Brock Purdy doesn't have the strongest arm in the NFL to begin with, and if that arm strength is limited in any way, then I just don't know if it's I don't even know why they'd consider putting him out there. So we'll probably learn a lot more today. I think around 12:30 we'll be out there practice and see what he's doing, if he's doing anything. Then of course the injury report comes out an hour or so after that.
Matt Maiocco joining us here on KNBR. I'm looking at the injury report from the last couple of days, Matt, because it's not just Brock Purdy. It's Aaron Banks. Anytime you get a couple of DNPs in the concussion protocol, Jordan Elliott, Nick Bosa, obviously with the hip oblique the last couple of days.
Lenore.
Yeah, Demo Lenore was the next one on the list. I mean, as you look at those names specifically, I mean, Trent Williams, again, with the ankle. I mean, of those guys, Trent and Lenore and Elliott, Bosa, Aaron Banks, I mean, it's not looking great really for any of those guys, is it? And of that group, I mean, who would you give the best chance to be able to play, if any of them?
Yeah, the best chance would be Lenore. It's not as I understand, it's not a ligament. It's a banged knee, so basically a knee contusion. And he did return to that game against the Packers. So, that's something I think where that would be kind of more of a pain tolerance kind of thing. And so that way he would have the best chance. And then with concussions, it's never it's kind of difficult to predict because, some guys make it through the concussion protocol, the return to play protocol for the NFL in a week. Some guys can do it in less than a week, and they're back out there playing. Other guys.
Is it possible to go from in the protocol on Thursday to playing on Friday? I mean, to playing on Sunday, rather.
Yes, absolutely. As long as they're progressing through the protocol, so there's several steps that are involved, and but at any point, if a person returns to concussion symptoms or feeling a headache, then you basically backtrack and you have to go and repeat steps. So then it becomes impossible. But as long as like they're doing the cardio, now they never specifically tell you what stage they are in the protocol, but sometimes you can kind of get a glimpse of what a person is doing, whether he's out in the weight room or running. In some cases, he'll be on the field and maybe starting to go through some football simulation kind of stuff. But, it is possible to do that just as long as they're making progress every day. And as long as they remain symptom-free every day, then they advance to the next stage of that protocol.
Talking to the great Matt Maiocco, NBC Sports Bay Area, our 49ers insider and Buffalo, New York weather expert. Matt, because it's all injuries all the time here, Fred Warner divulged this week that he's been playing with a broken ankle, at least now has made that public. Yeah. What did you make of him coming clean on that before we get into December? That's usually a January final week of the season sort of thing. Him coming clean on that, and clearly it's affected his play. But again, why do you think he came clean on that now?
Well, I would say two things. Now, there's two. One thing was he was asked specifically about his ankle, and I don't know that he's been asked specifically about his ankle since he got removed from the injury report. So that would be one, that he was asked about it. The second thing is that he's starting to come under some scrutiny. People like, Fred Warner's got to be the guy. He's got to carry this defense. He's got to make more plays. He's got to take this team on his shoulders. He can't be out there missing 4 tackles, a game high, game worst, I should say, 4 tackles for the 49ers. So I would imagine, there's probably a little bit of frustration for him to hey, I'm taking some criticism. I'm doing everything for the team. I'm getting shot up, as he said, to even play in games. And that's, for a lot of guys, I mean, that's a big thing to get shot up. And we saw Trent Williams do it, and he felt worse the day after that game. That was against Seattle. And now, he missed one game and might miss another game. So my guess is probably a little bit of frustration for Fred to hey, just so before you start jumping on my butt about not playing as well, here's the reason why. I mean that's only natural that a guy would want.
Totally fair.
To kind of disclose, to let people know the challenges that he's facing, rather than taking all the heat for not playing well.
Matty, we were talking about the news this morning in the NFL with Matt Eberflus being fired by the Bears, and if you watched even the last 5 minutes of the game yesterday, in addition to the 6-game losing streak now, and things really careened after the Commanders hit that Hail Mary back at the end of October. That's the 49ers' next opponent after Buffalo. It's the Bears' next opponent because they played yesterday, are the 49ers. What would Matt Eberflus be somebody, and I want to get your assessment of where things stand with the 49ers and Nick Sorenson and the remaining games that are left. But would he be somebody that you think the 49ers would consider if they're looking for a defensive coordinator in the offseason?
I think that the number one name, if they're looking for a defense coordinator, I'm not 100% sure that they would be. I'll give you an example here. Let's go back to Matt Eberflus yesterday. I don't think that it was the actual game management. And now, on face value, it wasn't how they handled that got him fired. I think it was what he said afterward that got him fired. Right. Basically, I'd do the same thing over again. Yeah. So coaches, here's the thing. Coaches make mistakes all the time, and ownership has to make decisions on coaches all the time, and head coaches have to make decisions on coordinator and position coaches. Well, if you think that a guy screwed up, but hey, that screw up will help him in the future because now he's been through that situation and he'll have a better idea of how to handle it, and you like the coach and you think he's got a lot of redeeming values, then you're going to hang with the coach. And with the Eberflus, I'm sure there's a lot building up to this, but for him to stand up there and say, "Oh, I don't second guess myself at all. We handled that exactly the way we wanted to." That was absolutely ridiculous. So even if management, were even if they weren't going to fire him based on just how they handled that, as long as he got up to the podium and said, "We screwed that up. This is what we should have done. We've been preparing for that, but we just absolutely messed it up, and that's my fault." If he says that, he probably still gets fired, but this made it
but maybe January 5th he gets fired instead of November 29th.
Exactly. This is so horrible. Okay, so anyway, my point is, with Sorenson, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and there have been rough patches, as there is certainly with any first-year coordinator. But Kyle Shanahan has to determine if what he's done won't be repeated, or the lessons that he's learned will make him better down the road. All that said, long answer for this Matt Eberflus question. But to me, the number one prospect for the 49ers, if they are looking for a new defensive coordinator, would be Jeff Ulbrich. The Bay Area ties, Kyle Shanahan knows him well. I've actually talked to Ulbrich in the past, and he told me that Kyle Shanahan is one of the smartest football minds he's ever been around, and he has a lot of respect for Kyle. And I know that Kyle wanted him after he fired Steve Wilkes. And I don't know exactly. I as I understand it, the Jets declined the 49ers, or declined to give the 49ers permission to hire Ulbrich. But I also think that there was some other stuff going on that didn't make it the best possible fit for Ulbrich, kind of stuff behind the scenes, nothing.
Looked at the Niners roster?
Well, no, it had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with football.
Okay.
But I'm of the belief that if it had been the best thing for Ulbrich and his family, that Robert Saleh would have allowed him to make that move. But at that time, it just wasn't. So, anyway, I don't think.
Matty? Is it maybe a deal where Ulbrich didn't maybe want to go, and the Jets just were the hard ass about it, so he didn't have to come out and kind of say it?
I kind of think so, and it had nothing to do with football. Let me just say that.
Sure.
Nothing to do with football. But I think that just for where he was and family and everything else, it just made more sense for him to stay there. Because remember also, just from a professional standpoint, for Ulbrich, what would be the advantage of leaving an organization where he had a good defense and there were such high hopes, and if he's looking to get a head coaching job, why start over somewhere else with another team? Just for a lot of different reasons. But now, with it being very unlikely that Jeff Ulbrich will be back with the Jets in any capacity, I think that it would be just a very natural fit if the 49ers decide to go that way, and Ulbrich looks around the NFL landscape and sees that his best opportunities with the 49ers as well. I think that would be just I think very seamless. And then people will say, well, what about Robert Saleh? He's out there. For Saleh, and I haven't talked to Robert about this, so I'm just speculating. But a lot of times when a guy in Saleh's position, he gets the head coaching job with the Jets because of the work he did with the 49ers. A lot of times guys will kind of want to get out of that whole, like, oh, you're, that umbrella of, oh, he's going to go back to the 49ers and do it all over again and then get another head coach. I think he would want to go somewhere else and probably, get out from under that idea of, he can only succeed on Kyle Shanahan's staff or anything of that nature. So my guess would be that he'll be a defense coordinator for some other organization next season.
Matty, thanks a lot for the time, man. Really appreciate it. And I guess I'll see you tonight.
You will see me tonight. And what are you wearing? Do we need to compare notes on what to pack for this trip?
I am. That is a noon issue for me. So yeah, text me at noon. I am highly conflicted. I did buy some thermal undergarments. No.
Okay, let's hope I
press
don't
box
have
is
to see
indoors,
those
boys.
at any point. Yes. Okay.
I added an extra layer. Let's put it that way. Okay. That I thought I might need in Green Bay, but really didn't need in Green Bay. That I may get some use now.
Okay, I might go grab some gloves or something. I think I might be low in the glove category.
Boots would be my question. Do you need some kind of boot to walk around?
You know what? Can I wear cowboy boots? Would that be okay?
If you're cool with ruining the leather.
If you got them, and you don't mind getting them wet.
Okay. Well, I think about this stuff. This is the kind of stuff that this is the important stuff.
Well,
it's also
what should Maddie and JD pack for Buffalo? 808 KNBR.
And which Buffalo Wings place do we have dinner at Saturday night? That's another big question.
Well, I'm on that during the commercial break for you guys. Don't worry about that. I got you on that.
No, I appreciate that. Maddie, thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, Matt Maiocco, sponsored by Golden State Lumber. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit us today at goldenstatelumber.com. All right, we'll continue the 49ers conversation here. Dieter, we've got Dennis Brown coming up at the bottom of the hour. We'll also get into some Warriors between now and 11:30. It's John Dickinson, Dieter Kurtenbach here on the Sports Leader.
What are you wearing?
Campbell, shout out to you for supporting KNBR, Campbell's sports leader.
All right, welcome back. It's John Dickinson and Dieter Kurtenbach here with you on Black Friday, Friday after Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving and a nice holiday weekend leading up to the 49ers and the Bills here on KNBR on Sunday Night Football, 5:20 Pacific, 8:20 Eastern, with the lake effect snow in the Buffalo and Orchard Park area over the next couple of days. So could be a snow game. And as Matty Maiocco was telling us, maybe the first real snow game for the 49ers in decades if it plays out that way.
Yeah, if anyone would know, it's Matt Maiocco. He's been boots on the ground, perhaps even cowboy boots on the ground for decades now. And certainly nothing comes to mind for me. I would be probably the last person you'd come to for such information on the matter. I don't know if any come to mind for you, JD. If Maiocco says it, I'm going to take it as gospel. And is it weird that I'm now rooting against you and Matt Maiocco and all of our friends on the 49ers beat and wishing for a snow game just to make this game possibly more visually interesting? Because if Brock Purdy doesn't play and Trent Williams doesn't play and Nick Bosa doesn't play, and we'll see what the Amador Lenore, I mean, all these injuries that the Niners have, it's one thing to be injured in Santa Clara. It's another thing to be injured when it's 25 degrees and the wind is whipping and who knows what's coming down from the sky. Like, man, I'm not feeling very optimistic. I know that's not a new take for Dieter Kurtenbach, but like, at least we get something visual out of it if it's a snow game. Maybe that is a blessing in disguise. Yeah. I'm
okay with it. And look,
do you think it's a competitive advantage for the Niners in that regard?
I don't know that it's a competitive advantage necessarily because I think they're so depleted, but I do think it levels the playing field some because the Bills have more weapons. So I think it short answer, I do think that kind of a game would help the 49ers as much as you would think that it doesn't help the 49ers because I think the Bills are more of a fast break, big play offense at this point, and I think the 49ers would love to try and run the football and make the game ugly and use a bunch of clock and keep Josh Allen off the field. So I think it plays well for the Niners, even if they end up with a bunch of those guys out. And I'm okay with it, man. Selfishly, like, hey, whatever we get, we get. I just hope I could get there, which knock on wood. I'm not the most easy. I'm kind of a nervous flyer to begin with. So then you add the weather element, and I get a little anxious, but that's okay. Again, not about me. But it's get there, and if it dumps, it dumps, man. Give me a snow game. I'm all for the snow game.
Well, good luck getting to Orchard Park if it's dumping snow. That sounds like it's going to be a blast. And then, I'm not entirely sure that it is this leveling factor in the game because when at a very simple level, after I watch, the last 3-4 games of the Niners opponent, I obviously have way too many viewings of the Niners previous games to go on here. My first rudimentary rubric of how this game should go is who can run the ball, who can stop the run, who can pass the ball, who can stop the pass. I think Buffalo wins on all of them, JD. I like their run game. I think that with Ray Davis and Cook, they have a much better run game this year in Buffalo than they have in previous years. So if it stays on the ground, and they have that guy at quarterback who, as we saw against the Chiefs in the Buffalo's last game, can just scamper on in from anywhere. And it's not like it's Patrick Mahomes and he's just barely beaten anybody. I mean, he'll just run over you. I mean, he is a one of one when it comes to his athletic talent and his ability to manifest it appropriately on the field. And Josh Allen, the Fireball California native, I'm not so sure that the Niners won a game where, hey, we get a lot of Christian McCaffrey runs. He hasn't looked very good. Their offensive line hasn't looked very good. You're now probably not going to have an entire left side of your offensive line, though I will say Jalen Moore was a bright spot for the 49ers in Green Bay. The Niners can't stop the run. The Niners can't pass the ball. I don't know if Josh Allen will be able to or not, but I'll take his chances over Brandon Allens. I know which Allen I'm taking. And ultimately, the Niners, if Buffalo watched anything from that Green Bay game, sadly, it's that you can get Renardo Green now. They attacked him relentlessly in that contest. And I love Renardo Green. I love what he's done. I'm very bullish on him long term. But he might have to deal with some of these growing pains that have been delayed over the next couple of weeks before he makes some adjustments, because it's pretty clear. I mean, Green Bay, say what you will about Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. Like, Matt LaFleur can scheme it up, and he decided that zero was his target again and again and again, and Renardo Green did very little to prove him wrong. I'd imagine that Joe Brady and the Buffalo Bills are going to be doing the exact same thing. But we will see. Weather could make the game muckier, but I'm not sure that's a terrible advantage for the Niners, all things considered.
Yeah, I think it gives them a slightly better chance than an awful chance, at least going into it. Maybe a slightly better awful chance at that point. But no, on the Renardo Green point, I mean, that just goes to whenever you have young players in the secondary, even players that project to be pretty good, and I'm with you. I think Renardo Green is going to have he had been having a really nice season, and I think he projects to have a really nice career, but it's just more attackable components, and really all three levels. And that's the thing where, if Buffalo's watching the 49ers this year and their run game is improved, that's something that I definitely caught, as you did, in kind of prepping for this game. Anybody that's watched the Niners, even teams that don't run it well, run it against the Niners and believe they can run it against the Niners. And Green Bay was the one where, Green Bay did exactly what I expected them to do with Josh Jacobs early and often in that game. Just hammer, use it to set up the pass, but just hammer away, and the 49ers would be unable to stop it. And the missed tackles and the inability to slow them down at the line of scrimmage. Like, it was just, they got brutalized in the game. And LaFleur is like Kyle Shanahan. McVay is like any of those guys that have that history. They look at a vulnerability in a team's run defense, and it's just something that they're going to hammer relentlessly. And so I thought the 49ers against the Packers got a dose of what they have done through the years to other teams. And it
looks
really
so reminiscent of the Niners just kicking the Vikings' ass or the Packers' ass back in the day in 2020. I guess it would have been 2019 NFC Championship game. Yeah, that was what the Packers did last Sunday is what Kyle imagined Debo and Christian McCaffrey would be able to do together, with the motion into the backfield and the funky running plays, the pirouettes from Jordan Love. That was the ideal. It just really didn't happen here in San Francisco all that often, and it's now coming into fruition with the youngest team in football in Green Bay, who I picked them before the season to win the NFC. I obviously had some second thoughts about that in the early goings of the campaign. I feel like I'm all the way back, baby. I feel like the Packers are probably the team to beat in the NFC, but we can get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, we can, and they got their 9th win. And look, they have. You look at resumes, and they're 9-3, and what their 3 are against the top 2 teams in Philly, 2 of the 3, and then they got beat by the Vikings as well earlier in the year. So they have 3 losses against 3 really good teams, and have seemingly been getting it together. I mean, the Niners and the Dolphins are just in shambles at the points in which they went to Lambeau, and the Packers, over a span of 4 days, just absolutely pummeled them, sought out weakness, and pummeled them with it over these last 2 games. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Dennis Brown, we might have to push him and or reschedule Dennis Brown. We'll see on that. We are going to talk some hoop with Mark Spears at 10:50, and then get into a Warriors conversation coming up in the 11 o'clock hour as we roll on here. And also, I got to get the wing spot. We're going to get the wing spot. Dieter's going to recommend the wing spot for Buffalo, assuming I can get around in the snow to get where we need to get it.
No Detroit recommendations.
Okay. Wait. Detroit rental car recommendations? Okay.
I mean, you're on your own on that one, but I think I got you covered when it comes to Buffalo, New York, and a wing spot.
All right, I'm in on that. We'll get to that coming up next. And also just how out of it the 49ers truly are at this point. I got my take on that coming up right here on the Sports Leader.
Oh, we're not off tomorrow.
You're not.
I don't know anyone who gets Thanksgiving off. You start a little bit earlier, you cram a lot in. There's less time in between. Everyone has different ways to do it, but I don't know anyone who gives it off unless maybe you have like a Monday night game, you have an 8-day week, maybe you could do that. But you just start a lot earlier. You get the players out. You usually don't watch film right after. You usually pick that up the next morning pretty early. So
working. I knew you were going to be working, but I didn't know how much.
No, we cram everything in, and the players get out earlier, so it allows us to start. What we usually do on Thursday nights, our red zone. We prepare for our team meetings and everything that we do Friday morning. But everyone gets out, tries to be home with the family by 5. I usually get home around 7, and they're all mad at me. And then I eat my dinner and get back to the red zone.
All right, Kyle Shanahan laying out the blunt reality of Thanksgiving in the NFL. Yeah, no media availability yesterday, but that doesn't mean they didn't have a practice and or still do everything that they do on a normal week, maybe just on a slightly different schedule. 49ers back in the field here in a couple of hours down in Santa Clara, then headed to Buffalo. It is John Dickinson and Dieter Kurtenbach here on a Friday on KNBR for another hour as we get you up to the Raiders and the Chiefs here on the Sports Leader. Give me that. You want to give me that wing spot? You want to react to what Kyle had to say there about the Thanksgiving schedule, which, I mean, we both kind of knew, but I think it is interesting to have him explain it for those who don't know that it's just another
if I'm Kyle,
game week Thursday.
Maybe I change the day I do red zone. Maybe Thursday is not the best day for that, given how they've performed in the red zone. Outside of give the ball to George Kittle, not sure they have a lot of red zone stuff that they've been working on, but I know they're working hard behind the scenes. Hasn't manifested on the field. Let me give you this wing spot, JD. It's called Gabriel's Gate. It's an old converted house in Buffalo, and I've been there once. It is a dive. Most places in Buffalo, bless them, are a dive. I don't mean that pejoratively.
Okay with that.
I mean that with the highest level of compliment.
Can I wear cowboy boots?
Gabriel's Gate has been recommended as best wings in the city a couple of times now, not just by me. I haven't tried enough of them to feel strongly about it, but I've been there. I can vouch for the wings, and Gabriel's Gate, I think, is the spot to go. But I don't think you can really go wrong. Much like Chicago pizza or, maybe New York slice, I don't know. There's so many good wing spots in Buffalo. Even if you choose the wrong place, you chose the right one. That's my take on it.
All right, Gabriel's Gate, man. I was jotting it down. I was actually looking up some Yelp reviews, and I mean, I'm in. I'm in. Open late, which I like.
Have to have it. Have to have the open.
Have to be open late because the best. You got a better shot, Dieter, of me having a wing or getting a plate of wings at after midnight than you do between like 3 and 7 p.m. That's just how I roll. Yeah.
Well, that would be my second plate of wings between midnight and 2 a.m. as opposed to my already fully devoured plate of wings or two prior to that. So yeah,
fair enough.
That's just bonus revenue for Gabriel's Gate if I was showing up in town and you stayed open late because I got a thing for wings, man. I would have a hard time if Buffalo wings disappeared from the face. I would have a hard time, JD. I'm already having a hard time. I can't be. Let's hold off on the avian flu for a while here so that I can still get my wings fixed. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of you, frankly. It sounds like it's going to be just a hellacious travel situation, but you get some wings on the other side. I mean, might all be worth it, JD. Might all be
makes it all worth it at that point. And maybe I will go double order. I mean, I've got some Warrior stuff that I got to do, some shows and different things I got to do there. So I haven't totally laid out what the Saturday is going to look like. Again, if it's dumping 2 feet of snow, I'm probably not going far. It's going to be hotel bar wings. Is probably what.
No, you got to
closest spot to around the corner from the hotel wings.
There we go. Yeah, you got to trudge a little bit. You got to earn it a little bit. Man, let me tell you that snow in Buffalo is no joke. Right? This isn't some light dusting. They consider like half a foot of snow a dusting in Buffalo, but that snow is wet and it is heavy. I have had to shovel out an entire car in Buffalo, New York. One night we went to sleep after an NCAA tournament game. This is back when I'm in college. Woke up, car was completely buried in snow. It was unbelievable. The entire world disappeared. It was something out of a science fiction thing. And there were just shovels. There's just community shovels. Everywhere has shovels. And so we just got a shovel and just started digging and eventually got this damn rental car out. And I'll never forget my winter trip to Buffalo, New York. I've been a couple of times, but my winter trip to Buffalo, New York scarred me for life. And even growing up in Chicago, a place that can get some serious snow, ain't nothing like Buffalo snow, man. You ain't ready for this, JD. You ain't ready for this.
Yeah, again, I am confident that I can hold my own as long as I can get there. As long as I can get there. Where the JD meltdown starts is where it's like, yeah, you might have to drive from Detroit to Toronto 4.5 hours or whatever, or to Buffalo, Toronto.
Just
I
stay
might go
in
to
Detroit
Toronto.
and don't tell anyone.
Well, nobody will know.
Just lay low. They won't find out.
Just lay low for a couple of days. No, that's so. Yeah, look, I've said this, and we can get back into this a little bit in terms of. I feel in some ways, as unrealistic as it may seem, like I'm actually one of the more optimistic viewers of the landscape as it relates to the 49ers. And again, admitting that every loss you take is an opportunity for a team to completely fray and let go of the rope. And I think we may have seen the 49ers start to let go of the rope a little bit in Green Bay. We'll see how this game plays out and whether they end up not having Aaron Banks and Jordan Elliott and Nick Bosa and Trent Williams and maybe Demo Lenore and Brock Purdy. It doesn't stack up well for the Niners. That being said, I still look at what's ahead, and I'm with you. You said this earlier. The Bears game is no lock. They just fired Matt Eberflus this morning, for those of you that are just joining us. The Rams are 5-6. They've got the same record as the 49ers. The Bears are 4-8 and have been dropping close game after close game after close game. I mean, they are a good 4-8 as much as they've earned the right to be 4-8 with a lot of their late game shenanigans that got Matt Eberflus fired earlier this morning.
Oh, my goodness.
Solid team, though. So, again, point being, don't want to belabor it. Not saying, Bears are a win.
Bears are plus
What's
one
that?
in point differential. Bears are plus one in point differential. They've lost 6 straight games.
The Bears are not a horrible team by any means. They have a lot of talent.
Bears.
The Rams are 5-6.
The worst strength of victories in the NFL, though, this year.
Who's that?
The Bears. The Bears have a 295 strength of victory. The Niners, also one of the worst, 386, but you already knew that.
No, but you look at the Niners. I mean, they've been beaten 3 times by really good football teams, the teams that I think we can say are clearly better than them in the Vikings, Chiefs, and Packers. And then there's the other 3 games, the Rams and Cardinals and Seahawks in the division, where you'd say, oh, okay, well, maybe not. But, yeah, the Seahawks' strength of victory is up there when you look at that. Arizona's is less than Seattle's, and then the Rams is better, is kind of in the middle between where Seattle and Arizona is. But it's the 3 division games that have wrecked this thing to this point for the Niners. Am I crazy, Dieter, in the short time that we have left, to believe that the 49ers are still more than just mathematically alive, even if they lose on Sunday? Because I look at it, again, no gimmies, but I look at it as, well, they can beat the Bears, they can beat the Rams, then they get the reset off of the Thursday night game and go to Miami, and I think they can beat Miami, although those 2 teams are probably pretty similar in terms of the seasons that they're having at this point. And then, of course, Detroit's going to be difficult. We'll see if the Lions are the number 1 seed by week 17 at that point, and the Cardinals would be a game that would be an automatic must-win if the 49ers can get to the point where that game matters. So I don't know. How crazy am I to still think that there's a better than just mathematical chance that the 49ers can make it, even if they lose this? And will they believe that there's anything left to fight for if they lose this, after looking like they let go of the rope a little bit against Green Bay, although the comments coming out of the locker room Wednesday were strongly to the contrary of that?
Yeah, well, you have to you got to sell something on a Wednesday. I would have loved more comments in the locker room on Sunday, but we're well on the record about that at this juncture. You're suggesting that should the Niners go on this now 3-game losing streak with a loss to Buffalo on Sunday, that they can win 4 of their last 5 games? Is that the fair suggestion here?
I think they
so
can.
That gets you to 9-8.
And then you don't know. It's not a lock, but it just depends on tiebreakers and all of that.
You know what? I'm not even going to disagree with the premise that they could beat Chicago, the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Cardinals to end the season at 9-8. I'm not sure that gets you in because of the Seahawks. It would put you over the top, I think, on Arizona and the Rams, just based on the head-to-head wins. Maybe that's simplistic thinking. But ultimately, we're talking about 9-8 and maybe making the playoffs if things break right for you. The idea that they're still in it, sure, if that's your standard. But we were talking about this team to win the Super Bowl. And now we're like, maybe 9-8 and make the playoffs. At a certain point, what's it for? What's the upside? I would love to see some heart, some fight, some scrap, some desperation might be the right word in Buffalo. And if they show that, then I can buy in on them maybe doing something. But to this point, JD, they have not shown another gear at all. They look like a team that has been running on empty since week 2, a team that doesn't have answers to the questions to the test, a team that is now getting more and more frustrated because they are underachieving and they're not living up to their own expectations. And that discordance frustrates you. It frustrates us. It frustrates them. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan, who's withering in front of our eyes right now, is not sleeping over the matter. But again, what are we talking about when we are discussing in it? Because the best that this team can do, the best case scenario as laid out by you and I and anybody else with any connection to this team who has watched this football team, the best case scenario is they make the playoffs and, oh my God, they won a game. They stole one in the first round, JB. Like what?
Yeah, that's a that is a disappointing season. That is a disappointing season. I think they're basically in. This is a disappointing season unless they can win multiple playoff games. And even if they did that and went to an NFC championship game and lost, they still would not have made it as far as they even did last year. And they would lament the ones that got away as for leading them down that path. So I understand all of that, but I've also heard
I can appreciate them doing that. That says something about them. That says something about their heart that they still did that even when they had every reason to just fold and give in. That they still went out there and fought.
A lot of it's time to shut it down. And look, I think Matt Barrows of The Athletic wrote about the fact that, hey, they're already playing a lot of young guys. To this point, there aren't
more Garendo?
There aren't a bunch of young guys that are
Yeah,
there aren't a bunch of young guys that are like waiting in the wings that aren't already getting snaps to where you're going to go the development route. So I don't know. I've just seen a lot of shut it down, tank basically for the best pick you can get, and I don't know. I still think there's a benefit toward. You might end up with a playoff home game. You might not, but you might if you can somehow win the division. Seattle slips up along the way. You can get to 9-8 and host that game. And yeah, if you win that game, you go to Detroit and Detroit beats you 55-17. Then so be it. You weren't better than Detroit anyway, but you at least salvage some semblance of dignity in not completely folding on December 1st.
Ultimately, this is a war of attrition. That the NFL is a war of attrition. And you look at what, every team, as much as it is, this team is so talented, or look at all the points they put in. It's who's healthiest latest, ultimately, in the NFL. Who has all their best players playing at their best when the stakes are highest. I don't think the 49ers are going to be that team, but maybe, channeling the 2022 Golden State Warriors, where everything just broke right for them on their path to a championship. And they did a lot of the work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they were fraudulent in any way, but it couldn't have gone better for them in terms of the path to a title that they then took advantage of. Staying in the game as long as possible is the only name of the game. if you're the San Francisco 49ers now. And frankly, it's never been that much more complicated than that. The Niners were just operating with such a surplus that it never felt dire like it does right now. But just stay in the game, and who knows? Who knows? Maybe you get to Detroit, and maybe they don't have all their best players, and who the hell knows? But just stay in the game and stay with us.
Well, and we've seen this team do it. Again, maybe not this team exactly, and I think that's the other part of it. I mean, this team is not some of the teams that the 49ers have had
of course.
These last few years, in particular defensively, but really on both sides of the ball as well. We have seen the 49ers, though, in the Kyle Shanahan era win multiple playoff games, even when it looks like they're cooked and won't have the ability to do it. He's gone 2-1 in each of the 4 times that they've made the playoffs. So he has had the ability, as much as he's maligned for not being a great playoff coach because they haven't won the last game, it's undeniable that he has been a quality playoff coach because they're 8-4, and that's almost impossible to have a record that good without winning a Super Bowl. Without having that one year where you go 4-0, it's almost impossible to have that good of a record. So I think that's as much as, again, everybody wants to talk about the last game of the year, I think there is still something for this team, Dieter, to salvage. Even if Sunday in Buffalo gets ugly, I believe there still is a pathway for this team to at least fight. Maybe they will lose on a tiebreaker the last game of the year. Maybe they lose at Arizona straight up the last game of the year. Hell, maybe they don't beat the Bears or the Rams. You lose one of those games, all right, you're done, in addition to Buffalo.
Totally.
Then it is time to pack it in. I just don't think we're already to that point where it's time for the 49ers to pack it in. And I don't, even if the game on Sunday in Buffalo goes as it sounds like we both think it will, especially if Brandon Allen's going to be out there at quarterback. So good conversation. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. We'll switch gears coming up. Mark Spears is going to join us. We'll talk some Warriors between now and 11:30, as the Warriors had yesterday and today off. They're back at practice today. They're going to Phoenix, and their gauntlet of a schedule of late continuing. What do the Warriors wind up doing to improve this roster? We'll get into that with Spears next here on the Sports Leader.
Anderson to trigger the inbound. Pajemski falls down. They got to get it in. Green in the corner to Wiggins. Got it off. He didn't draw iron. Clock running and stops now with 1.2 to go. What a pass by Draymond just to get it to Andrew Wiggins, who couldn't get it to fall.
All right, welcome back. Warriors lose to the Thunder on Wednesday. It's John Dickinson and Dieter Kurtenbach here on KNBR 104.5 FM and 680 AM San Francisco, the sports leader. As we get closer to hour number 3 here, a truncated hour it will be as we're getting you to the Raiders and the Chiefs this afternoon. A little Black Friday Amazon Prime special here on the sports leader. But let's get out to the UMA guest line again. Let's talk some Dubs and NBA with senior NBA writer for Anscape and ESPN and the Hall of Famer Mark J. Spears joining us here on the Sports Leader. What's going on, Spears?
Oh, man, just heading down to the San Jose State-Stanford game.
Awesome.
See Stanford lose and, us get 7 wins and head to a bowl after that.
Yeah, nobody is prouder of their alma maters than Mark Spears, man. Like I love the love that you have for the Spartans and Go Tigers down at LSU and anywhere else I may be missing, man. You ride it, and I appreciate it. I respect it.
Langston University. I got a doctorate, Foothill College. I guess the AA that counts, right? So.
Oh yeah.
Just tell everybody when you have multiple degrees, you can root for multiple schools.
That's how they get you. That's how they keep getting that tuition from you. You're like, I really like this LSU football program. Let's throw a couple sawbucks their way and get in on that act.
Yeah.
I don't know about your Tigers this year, so I'm glad the Spartans are doing well for you, Spears.
It's been a tough season. We'll see what happens tomorrow against Oklahoma. That should be interesting.
Yeah, classic rivalry there.
No question. And, Mark, we hope, obviously, you had a great Thanksgiving as well. We want to mention that. And let's talk some hoop here. The Warriors, for the first losing streak of the season. Didn't have Steph the other night. They competed after a bad first quarter. They're 12-6 though, which is, I think, still better than anybody could have expected. Just give me your general sense of where the Warriors are right now and their appetite to still look to evaluate what they have versus what maybe they could get.
Yeah, I think if you would ask most Warriors fans if they would have been happy with a record like that going into, Thanksgiving, they would have been like, oh, yeah, like, sure, we'll take that. Obviously the team has spoiled everybody here. I'm stunned that they came up to this start, especially with the fact what Steph has missed 4 games, and that was the first game they lost without him, which certainly has been a testament to their depth. But, with Melton being done for the season, that's, I think, a huge hit to the roster, and he needs to be replaced. I still feel like the Warriors need a number 2 guy, but, I talked to Draymond Green after the game on Wednesday. He was sitting in his locker playing chess on his phone, didn't look really, worried. And I said, you guys got a tough slate coming up, reason for concern. And he's like, well, it's the same team that was 11-2 last week. I'm not worried. I said, okay. He'd tell me if he was, but that's basically what Draymond said.
Spears, with the performance they put out, they played a great game against the Thunder on Wednesday night, and they had a shot there, right? Wiggins, he just catches that ball and is able to lay it in. We got an entirely different ball game, perhaps, but when you look at just the box score without Steph in there, a lot of guys chipping in. Does it feel, though, like this sort of strength in numbers, 12, 13-man rotation, 15 minutes for Pat Spencer on a Wednesday night before Thanksgiving? Does it feel like it's running its course a bit?
Yeah, the dude wears number 61, man. That just...
he can play for the Spartans, but come on now.
Yeah, it looks like somebody that just won a contest went out there, but he played well, man. I get to do this credit. He grinded to get to the NBA. I just, the lack of scoring in the fourth quarter, to me, was like a big concern. It was like there was nobody that wanted the ball. There was nobody that wanted to be assertive. You think about it, like in a lot of ways, Kuminga and Wiggins, like we keep yearning for them to be an alpha guy, an alpha dog. I'm going to take this over and take the team to the finish line, and neither one of them did it. And, Buddy Hield wasn't in the end, but perhaps that was for defensive reasons. So I just, like, when Steph's not there, who do you turn to, right? And that's, to me, just another sign that just so important to get somebody else. And, we could keep rolling the names out, but I just really think that you're asking too much for the Warriors to put this on Steph, to shoulder this team to the playoffs and something special. And then when he's not there and he's getting older, he's only playing 30 minutes a game now, I just think there's a recipe for problems if he gets a serious injury at some point.
Well, and you're already seeing the fact that they are clearly trying to be careful with him. I mean, I think this knee thing that popped up over the last week, they've been really careful to make sure that even though it's not serious, he's going to get that game that frankly he wouldn't take like the last 4 or 5 years. Like he would not have taken Wednesday. He would have played Wednesday, and because he could have, and so they're clearly trying to be more careful. His minutes are down a little bit. I mean, he's playing a little under 30 on average, so I think they're aware of it. But as they become more unable to win at the level that they had been, I wonder if there's more of a thought to I know he's going to want to push it because he always wants to push it to get those wins. I want to go back to what you were saying about Wiggins and Kuminga specifically, and I think you could make the case even when Steph's around, they have issues with Steph can make something happen and his gravity and all that, but the lack of a next guy is there even when Steph is around. Kuminga wants the ball. Wiggins, I'm with you, maybe doesn't, but Wiggins and Kuminga are so fascinating because Kuminga wants the ball, but he just to this point still doesn't quite know what to do with it as that feature guy, and that's okay. That's part of being young, but at what point, again, just kind of give me your sense for where things are between the organization and him from everything you hear, because everybody really speaks highly of him. I don't think anybody wants to disrespect him or put him in a position where he strongly wants out. I know there's been some voicing from his agent and different things about not being happy at different points. Where are things with Kuminga? Because I still think he's the chip that they can use to get the guy that maybe could help alleviate some of this pressure, as he still shows that he's not the guy yet at this point of his career that can take on that load.
Well, I do think that Kuminga's agent has to be a little careful. You got to be careful what you wish for, because when they trade you, he don't have the power to be like, hey, I want to go here or here or here, right? This St. Damian Lillard, and even Damian Lillard didn't get his wish. So the grass isn't always greener on the other side if you get moved, because the Warriors are going to make a move that's best for them. That's not best for JK. And so, but I do feel like if there is a move that will be made, it's going to be made with him, right? Like to me, it's just inevitable that he's going to probably be involved in it. I think that all Warriors fans are probably yearning for just some more consistency from him. Maybe a means to, make the offense easier for him, because everything seems like such a hard bucket, right?
Right.
And so, but then you're tantalized by his athleticism and his youth, and they need him. And so it's one of those things I'm just waiting for some consistency, waiting for some fight. I just don't know when if it's gonna happen here or somewhere else or at all.
Spears, looking around the Western Conference, obviously the Warriors, this has been a positive surprise, even as they're coming back to earth a little bit here. But I look down in the standings, and obviously it's all jumbled up and everything's pretty tight. But outside of the playoff standings as it stands today, we're not even in December yet, but the Minnesota Timberwolves at 8-10, and I see Anthony Edwards calling out his team for being front runners. What have you made of the Timberwolves season so far? Obviously, they made a big trade this past off season. Is that rearing its head? What's going on with the T-Wolves?
Yeah. That's a great question. I have a story on Jaden McDaniels today, and, they're still adjusting to obviously a major trade, and that's a tough thing when you make a trade that late. Then, you're just showing up in the start of training camp. Like typically guys will be at the beginning of September will be in, be working with the franchise and getting their things together for camaraderie. And so it just doesn't seem with Julius that things are quite on the same page. Like you saw the Rudy Gobert play. And that's out of character for Rudy to be so frustrated about not getting a touch offensively that he gets a 3-second play. Like I've never seen somebody like have a fit and get a 3-second call. So obviously there's some things to work out there. And I'll tell you what, if you're going to have these issues, it's better to have these issues in the beginning of the season than to have them later, right? Like whatever the issue is about offense and role or this, that, and the third, like there's still a lot of time to get it together. If you look at the Knicks, even through their trade, like they've been hit and miss too. So, I mean, both teams haven't quite adjusted well to the trade. So, it's early, but these are the things that in the long run do help a team like the Warriors out when you see Denver not start off so great, when you see Minnesota not start off so great. That gives the Warriors a little bit of room for error that will help them out come playoff seeding time.
Yeah, and even Dallas has gotten it going a little bit of late, but they're 11-8. Denver, you've got Michael Malone just going in on his team.
But hey, man, the West is good. Like they're gonna just keep beating up on each other, right? Like there's even Oklahoma City, like they lost Holmgren, they're beatable right now. But the West reminds me of like this old battle royal wrestling match where everybody is just beating each other up, and then at the end, it's gonna probably be a repeat movie. Celtics being there with a clean jersey, and whoever wins the West looking like they just won the Revolutionary War, coming in bleeding with bandages on their head, and Celtics probably end up being champs again.
Yeah, it is setting up that way. I'm with you. And I think it is from the Warriors' standpoint, it's probably good that I still think there's a team or two that probably gets to 50 in the West, but I think there's going to be a lot of 46, 47, 48. Like I think it's going to stack up more like it did 2 years ago than it did last year, where you had this a bunch of teams that the records maybe aren't as great, but it's deeper as far as maybe the disparity from third to, say, 10th might be only a couple of games. So I think that we'll see. It always does separate some, but I just look at it from the Warriors standpoint specifically and think it's probably a good thing that Minnesota's on the outside looking in, and Phoenix can't really win unless they've got all three guys with Booker and KD and Beal playing together, and Denver is kind of a mess, and Dallas is still figuring it out.
Yeah, there's nobody that's having an easy way, but still in all, we're beating a dead horse here. Like ultimately those teams are going to get it together or get healthier, as the Phoenix Suns are getting healthier now. What is the Warriors counter? What do they do? Because just keeping it the way they are now, I don't think that's the answer.
Spears, appreciate you, man. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game today, and we'll talk to you again here soon.
All right. Thank you, brothers.
All right,
Spears.
appreciate it. Mark Spears joining us here on KNBR on a Friday. We'll come back. We'll wrap things up. We'll get you closer to the Raiders and the Chiefs here on Black Friday, and we'll talk some Dubs to close things out on the Sports Leader.
Menlo Park, shout out to you for supporting KNBR. Menlo Park's Sports Leader.
All right, final segment. John Dickinson and Dieter Kurtenbach here on this post-Thanksgiving Friday. Raiders and Chiefs coming up here in about 10 minutes on the Sports Leader. Make sure you join me tomorrow for Just Dubs from Buffalo tomorrow, 11 o'clock, right after Larry's 49er forecast. He'll be on at 10, I'll be on at 11, and then Dubs OT tomorrow after the Warriors take on the Phoenix Suns down in the Valley. So that'll be right around 8:15, 8:30. We'll have all your post-game Dubs reaction, and then Sunday on with Adam Copeland before and after the 49ers. And the Bills will be on at 2 with the pregame for that one, the 5:20 kickoff between the Niners and the Bills. Dieter, some Warriors thoughts here. First losing streak of the year, competitive against OKC. The game that really you can't lose is the one to Brooklyn, although Brooklyn did have a nice road trip. They won in Phoenix and Sacramento around that Warriors victory at Chase. I thought the San Antonio loss was running out of gas, fourth game in 6 nights, back-to-back. But the prevailing issue has been in 2 of these 3 games, just not enough offense down the stretch. Now, you don't have Steph on Wednesday, and I think they got tired in San Antonio. But when you look at this team, big picture, what have the last 3 games told you as far as the direction you think they need to look to move?
Yeah, it really does feel as if this strength in numbers thing that got them off to such a great start has reached at least some sort of a conclusion. It's not to say they can't keep winning. It's not to say that they won't win more than they lose. But this is the issue when we talk about big picture Golden State Warriors, and the reason why well before the skid, there were plenty of very well-respected, very thoughtful people saying, nah, they got to make a move. Like this won't fly. It's not flying in the regular season now. Now, I agree with everything you just laid out. They were tired in San Antonio, and it's very difficult to beat an alien in the game of basketball. That kid is insane. Victor Wembanyama. It was obvious he was going to take over that game late, and he did. His presence alone changes the course of basketball games, particularly when you don't have legs under you. But the Oklahoma City loss, I thought, was jarring. And all the credit in the world to the Warriors for playing a very good Oklahoma City team tight. But as Spears mentioned, as you mentioned, and as I'm going to lean in on, anyone want to score the damn basketball? They were in the mud in the fourth quarter on offense. And it's not tenable. It's not tenable if Jonathan Kuminga's not ready yet. It's not tenable if Andrew Wiggins is the same Andrew Wiggins we've always seen, a beta, not an alpha. I can't even get angry at the guy anymore. This is all he's ever been. Take him for what he's worth. He's a damn good basketball player, so long as you don't want anything more from him. And so this is just a team that is really good for the first 42, 43 minutes of a game. But if Steph Curry's not out there doing superhuman stuff late, and we've had to see that a couple of times already this year, as we've certainly seen it throughout his career. But if Steph Curry's not out there giving you everything and a little more late in the game, creating an entire offense out of one man, this team can't put the ball in the basket late, and it doesn't seem as if they're willing to risk it in some cases. You say, yeah, Kuminga wants the ball. I didn't see him trying to take over, overdoing it, airs of commission as opposed to airs of omission, which is what we get from Andrew Wiggins. I didn't see anybody saying, I'm the man tonight, and let's do this thing. In fact, it felt like the only one who wanted the damn ball was Lindy Waters. And if you're saying that sentence, yeah, some changes need to be made, JD.
Yeah, I do think Kuminga wants it. I just think Kuminga is so unsure when his first move is he to me at this point of his career is the to use a football analogy, he is the first read quarterback, right? Like if he gets it and he's got a lane all the way to the bucket to lay it in without much defensive resistance or dunk it or get fouled, then that's the first read. And when the first read is there, he's awesome, and he'll get to the line.
He's Jimmy G. He'll win you games.
And I think he looks to do that. And when that read is not there, he I think immediately wants to shoot threes, to be honest, because I think that's the path of least resistance, and that's one area where I've quibbled with Warrior fans and even at times some within the organization, because they do want collectively to shoot more threes, but Jonathan Kuminga should never be taking 10 threes in a game at this point of his career, even a game where Stephen Curry is out. So I think he would like to comfortably, because he views himself as Kobe or Paul George or Kawhi, like he views himself as this perimeter wing who also plays the 4, and so he's very comfortable at shooting from the perimeter as opposed to figuring out a way to drive. And then his vision is bad. Like, again, he's a young player. I'm not to me, like, running things through him is almost a disservice to him at this stage of his career, even with Steph Curry out. But he is willing to do it. He just doesn't have great court vision. So when he puts his head down and drives, he doesn't really know what the heck he wants to do with it. That's basically the third read, right? But he makes the decision of, I want to shoot this jumper or I want to get all the way up to the basket on the first read. The third read is, I'm going to drive and I'm going to pass it no matter what, and that's where he gets himself in the air and he wings it out of bounds, like happened down the stretch. Again, I'm not one that believes he should be at a point where he's a carrier late in games. I know there are some that believe he should be to that point and that he's this future star that's been, coached to a point where he's been, disallowed to flourish in that way, and that the Warriors would be better off if he had been allowed more reign. That is complete and utter nonsense. But I mean, I still,
if you want to stake the wagon of the Golden State Warriors to Jonathan Kuminga, you get what you deserve on that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the he's willing to do it. He wants to be the number 2 and the number 1 when Steph is out. I think there's a certain portion of the fan base that looks at it as, well, he's the most talented guy and should be farther along were it not for Steve Kerr. Again, I think it's unfair to put that level on his plate. But if we're getting to the point where they're going to have to pay him a large amount of money here, and they're still looking for that number 2, and we're finding out that it's not him, which I think, as well as he's played in his role at the 4 off the bench since Steph Curry went down in that game at the right before the end of October against the Pelicans when he missed the 2 games. Like, Kuminga played great, but he played great at the 4 coming off the bench. Like, that's where he plays great with this Warriors team. If that's going to be the ceiling for this year, and then you have to pay him, then and you still need that number 2, then you start to get down that road that we've been at so many different times where he becomes the player that I think, maybe not for a star even, but for somebody that can help improve this roster, would need to be in some kind of a deal.
I love this idea that there's so much more of Jonathan Kuminga. Like, yes, he is unquestionably a brilliant athlete. Talent gets you into the NBA. Understanding your role keeps you in the NBA. And I'm looking at the NBA, the first team from last year, right? It's Giannis and it's Jokic. And then it's Doncic, Tatum, and SGA. Those guys are 26, 25, and 26. They've been superstars forever. You could convince me that Doncic and Tatum have been superstars for a decade now, even though they haven't even been in the league a decade. Like, the idea that there's this late bloomer effect, like, that's just not how it works in basketball. We would have seen more by now if there was more to give. And I'm not saying that Kuminga can't further refine, but I think it's a paring down as opposed to a building up if you're dealing with Jonathan Kuminga.
It's a continue to work on your ability to see the floor better. It's work on your handle. It's those kinds of things. It's, not be content just settling for threes.
These are not superstar conversations. These are you a really good 3? Can you be an Andrew Wiggins? This is not, can you take over a franchise and win titles? Like, the guy's got no court vision. The guy doesn't have a feel for the game. He plays plenty, right? We're at the point now where we should know one way or another with Jonathan Kuminga. He's asking for $250 million, and we're out here saying, I don't know about the court vision. I don't know if he... The answer is in the indecision. And ultimately, if there's a portion of the fan base that wants to go all in on Jonathan Kuminga, they cannot be taken seriously, so we don't have to listen to him.
Well, and I think it's becoming abundantly clear. So a conversation that I don't think is necessarily going anywhere, and we'll continue to have it, but I think we're getting the answers even here in the last couple of weeks when he's played well. Dieter, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you. We will do this again soon. For Jacob Violante, I'm John Dickinson. Raiders and Chiefs coming up next right here in the Sports Leader.